Today we're speaking with Bill McGloin, who is Chief Technologist Information at Computacenter. Bill, next year we're going to see the General Data Protection Regulation come into force, or GDPR. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, it can be a very complex subject, so I'll kind of make it as simple as I can, really. At a basic level, it puts legislation around how organisations govern, manage, protect and secure data. It applies to any organisation that will hold either personal data or personally identifiable data. It applies to any organisation. It's an EU-wide regulation, but doesn't apply solely to the EU. It applies to any organisation which holds data relating to EU personnel, individuals. Comes into force 25th of May 2018, so we've got a year to go. So it's now time for people to start actively thinking about it and actively acting on the legislation that's coming into force. Builds on the DPA, so the Data Protection Act in the UK, but adds more formal processes around it.
And how does it differ from the existing regulation we have now?
Well, it puts more power at the hands of the individual. So individuals then have both the right to find what information companies have on them, the right to be forgotten. It also puts the onus on companies to make sure the data is accessible, available, and also that they have security into place to make sure that if there's a breach or if there's any kind of hack of their data, that they can notify the authorities in a timely fashion, and they can also notify the individuals that are affected by that breach.
And who does the regulation apply to? Is it primarily larger organisations, or should all companies be aware of GDPR?
Well, so it applies to any company that will hold personal data. So even the smallest company will have HR systems in place, so it will apply really to all organisations across the EU, but not only the EU. Anyone that holds information relating to EU individuals is governed by this legislation. So it really will impact every client, every customer that is out there, every business that is out there will have to act on this legislation.
So how can companies ensure that they are compliant in time for when the regulation comes into force next year?
Well, I think the first thing is that they have to realise the time frame they're operating in. So we have a year to go, and while a year might seem a long in terms of the IT world, in terms of security world, it's not just about technology. So that as well as understanding what data they have and what is sensitive data, what might be personally identifiable data, and potentially anonymising that data, it's not a long time frame to do that. But it's not only about technology, it's about the people and the process as well. So we may have to change the processes within business. We may have to, all organisations are now going to have to appoint a data protection officer, a DPO, who will have the responsibility to ensuring that a company's data is both secure, but it's also available if someone requests data, or being able to prove if they want to have the right to be forgotten, be able to prove that they have found all the data on that individual, erased it, and provided proof of having erased that data. So it's not a long time to meet the processes, meet the legislations that they have to meet. So it's very important that everyone that's impacted by this, and that is every organisation, really starts now if they've not already started.
What happens if a company isn't compliant by the time the deadline rolls around next year?
Well, so the very obvious impact is that they're liable to fines. So the fines they're liable for are up to 20 million euros or 4% of their global revenue. Now, 20 million euros may not be a lot of money to some very large organisations. 4% of revenue for their global turnover absolutely is. And even the smaller organisations are liable for the fines up to those amounts. So undoubtedly we will see some test cases, undoubtedly we will see some people in breach of the regulations, and undoubtedly those fines will start to impact the businesses that are non-compliant. So companies are mandated to follow the legislation, so it really is something that they have to do, or they take the risk. It's as simple as that. It's a very high risk, however.
As we're seeing more and more cases of data loss and data breaches.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one thing they have to do. If there is a data breach, they have to let the Information Commissioner's Office know within a defined time period, 72 hours. So they have to notify both the ICO, but they also have to notify the individuals that are impacted by that. And that's why I go back to the business process. They may not have the business processes in place right now to be able to accommodate what they have to do to meet the guidelines.
And alongside those business processes, what are some of the key technologies that companies should be looking at to help them stay compliant?
Oh, it's a very interesting question. So I guess there's multiple component parts. And I say this, in terms of technology, that they have to understand what data they have, where the data comes from, how people use the data, and how secure it is. So I will talk about the governance of data, how they manage it, protect it, and how they protect the outside world from accessing that data, understanding what data they have. And actually, as we start to talk about digital transformation, the data they have can be turned into valuable business information. As we talk about digital transformation, information is now the currency of digital transformation. So it is at the core of driving a digital-driven business or a data-driven business. So it's really important. It's an opportunity for customers really to get their house in order, to become data-driven, and actually to get benefit from the data that they have and turn that into valuable business information.
What role can an IT solution provider or a service provider like Computacenter provide to their customers around GDPR?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think you'll find that it is a hot topic just now. Absolutely, GDPR is front of mind for lots and lots of organisations just now. And there's no one organisation will provide the full compliance solution. Where companies like Computacenter and solution providers come in, we can start to identify where the gaps are. We can work with people that in the legal fraternities. We're not a legal company, but we can work with legal organisations to look at the legal frameworks that are in place, identify where the gaps are, and then in a structured fashion, put the component parts in place to allow companies to become compliant.
So should businesses be concerned by GDPR?
Oh, so I think concern's, again, an interesting term. They should only be concerned if they're willing to take the risk to do nothing. I see it much more as an opportunity for them rather than a concern. It's an opportunity to really get your good housekeeping in order, to get your processes aligned, to understand what data you have, understand what value it brings to the business. And absolutely, the concern would be that if you do nothing, there's a reputational risk, and with the reputational risk comes the risk of loss of business. The flip side to that, however, if you can show that you're fully GDPR compliant, you have the benefit of customer trust, customer loyalty, and enhanced business processes. And really, the value to the business of being compliant is having your data in order, understanding what you have, making sure it's secure, and then driving business value out of the information that you have. So I see it more as an opportunity, and we would see that companies that are potentially GDPR compliant could have a rise in the share price, for example, as opposed to companies that are obviously non-compliant, who would run that reputational risk. So I absolutely see it as an opportunity rather than a concern as such.
So almost on two levels, your organisation must be compliant, but you want to make sure that the companies that you also deal with are compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a data protection officer in place, and we host a lot of customers' data. So potentially we would be liable because we are the controller of that data. So yeah, absolutely, we have to make sure our house is in order, and from that, we're being early adopters of the technology. We can then understand and provide the knowledge that we've gained through those processes, and we can replicate it out to customers to both facilitate their compliance, accelerate their time to compliance as well, and drive business value to them. So it is a kind of win-win for us in having the status that we have and the technology facilities that we have and the vendor partners that we have, because ultimately we will use technologies to solve a lot of the problems, but not necessarily, as I say, it's not just about technology. It is about how data is secured and what the company and organisation processes to support that are, and having the right personnel in place, and ultimately then understanding who is accessing data for them and what value it has to them.
And interestingly, it doesn't apply just to organisations in the EU. It can be any organisation that does business with EU countries.
Yeah, absolutely. So as much as it applies to EU residents and EU personnel, any organisation that hosts data or processes data of an EU citizen is liable. So any of that will apply in the US. It will apply globally. To all geographies, really. Anyone that is processing data of an EU citizen is covered by these legislations. So they are mandated to follow the guidelines. So it's not just about EU, it's not just about UK, it is globally.
Is there anything else that you think is important to know as an organisation around GDPR?
Well, I think obviously the time frame for it to come in is key. It's important that you understand the processes you have to follow. It's important, I guess I think it goes back to the word opportunity for me. I think it's an opportunity for people to get their house in order, really drive some business value, and turn what they have, make sure it's secure, make sure it's governed, and absolutely become, follow the digital transformation route. This really allows companies to start on that journey if they've not already started. So it just puts a baseline in place for organisations to move forward.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, thank you.